Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Patterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
I'm pleased to welcome you all here to the Distinguished Poets Series, and we're very honored to have Tori Derricotte read for us today. I will say that these readings are made possible by grants from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, by Passaic County Community College, and also by individual donations from supporters of the Poetry Center. Tori Derricotte is the recipient of the 2021 Wallace Stevens Award from the Academy of American Poets for outstanding artistic achievement in the art of poetry over a poet's career, and the 2020 Frost Medal from the Poetry Society of America for distinguished lifetime service to American poetry. Her sixth collection of poetry, New and Selected Poems, was published in 2019 and shortlisted for the 2019 National Book Award. Other books of poetry include The Undertaker's Daughter, Tender, Captivity, Natural Birth, and The Empress of Death House. Her literary memoir, The Black Notebooks, won the Ansfield Wolf Book Award for nonfiction and was a New York Times notable book of the year. With Cornelius Eady, Derricotte co-founded the Cave Canem Foundation in 1996. She's a professor emerita from the University of Pittsburgh and a former chancellor of the Academy of American Poets. Tori Derricotte is also one of the bravest, most honest, most wonderful poets you could possibly ever read or get to know. Let's welcome Tori Derricotte.
I'm so glad to be here. I just remember the days that I would read in the Passaic County lunchroom. Was it?
Yes, in the cafeteria.
In the cafeteria, yeah. Oh man, those were fun days. I think one time when I read, there were all these famous poets that would be there with me. Like I think Allen Ginsberg was there one time when I read.
Oh yeah, we had it at the Patterson Museum, and we called it the Patterson Poetry Marathon.
Wow.
So all those poets went into the schools too, and then
I was so proud to be a New Jersey poet. You know, I really felt so attached. You know, I think I even wrote a poem about, you know, being on the other side of the river and, you know, how we were so special, you know. I really love that. Well, today I was thinking about my reading and somebody asked me to find poems that were ignored by readers and read, you know, and you know, look at those poems. And I started looking at poems that I never read, or, you know, poems that other people don't anthologize or talk about, and I wondered about that, and I read some of them today, and I think they're pretty good poems, and I just wonder why they're ignored. You know, maybe they're, a couple of them are long, maybe that's why. So anyway, I'm going to read some of these poems, and you can tell me why if you want, if we have time to talk. Maybe I'll read for about 20 minutes. What do you think of that, Maria? If I read for
read for the whole time, honey, because it's going to go out on live stream. And
okay. How much time do I have now?
Well, wait a minute, and I'll look at my phone. You have about 25 minutes.
Okay, all right. very good. So that would be about 10 to 3, maybe? No,
No, about 3.
about 3. Okay. When I named this book Tinder, I was thinking about the 3 meanings of Tinder. You know, Tinder is like meat is Tinder, or Tinder to a person, but Tinder is also money, Tinder. And also it's taking care of another person, or tending. You're a tender if you take care of somebody. So it has 3 meanings. And I think how I describe this book at the beginning is I say, and I have never done another book like this, but every one of my books is organized in a different way. Tinder is not to be read in linear fashion. Rather, it is a 7-spoked wheel with the poem Tinder as the hub, each spoke or subdivision radiating out from that center. Violence is central in our lives, a constant and unavoidable reality. Damn, aren't we up against that right now? You know, experience is not a linear construct moving from one point to another, childhood to maturity, bad to good, beginning to end, but a wheel turning around a point that shifts between hope and despair. Quote, at the still point of the turning world, end quote, the job of the artist is not to resolve or beautify, but to hold complexities, to see and make clear. That's my feeling about it anyway. And this poem, Tender, is the first poem, which sort of has all 3 of those meanings in it. The tenderest meat comes from the houses where you hear the least squealing. The secret is to give a little wine before killing. That's a poem I copied down from a conversation I heard at a restaurant. And this is the way they actually killed cows in this town this person was from. The tenderest meat comes from the houses where you hear the least squealing. The secret is to give a little wine before killing. Okay, that's one of the poems they don't take. Okay, here's another one. Exits from Elmina Castle, Cape Coast, Ghana. Gotta make a way out of no way, traditional Black folk singing. The journey. There is no perfect past to go back to. Each time I look into your eyes, I see the long hesitation of 10,000 years. Our mothers' sitting under the shade trees on boxes waiting. There's some great question in your eye that no longer needs asking. The ball glistening, wet, the black iris, intense. We know the same things. What you wait for, I wait for. You know, I visited Cape Coast, Ghana, where the slave castles were. And the story about those castles is that, you know, they would take slaves from all of these, you know, villages, very different villages around, this one place, this castle that the Portuguese operated for, how many years did it say? Elmina Castle is one of the fortresses in which the slaves were held captive before they were transported across the ocean. Because ships came in frequently and there had to be sufficient numbers of people transported to make a voyage profitable, thousands were often held for months waiting. It is estimated that somewhere between 20 and 60 million Africans were captured, enslaved, and brought to the Americas. The Dutch and Portuguese took slaves from Elmina Castle, a structure built by the Portuguese in 1482. That's 500 years ago, and sent them to Brazil, Suriname, and other colonies. Slaves from Cape Coast and other fortresses were brought to the Caribbean and the United States. Elmina was in operation for more than 3 centuries. So, you know, it is hard hearing these poems. It's hard to read them. I don't read them. So let's try to hear. There was somebody in your class, Maria, who said that when you write something, sometimes when you write something difficult, you feel it in your heart. It's painful. So let's try to feel it in our heart, even if it's painful. That is so hard. And as a writer, I don't want to bring you pain. So part of me doesn't even want to read this. I don't want to bring myself pain, is probably the bottom of it, you know. But anyway, this is what I wrote when I went to this castle. They take you on a tour. The tour. The castle, always on an outcrop of indifference. Human shells, the discards on the way. Millions died in the middle passage, you know. It was so horrible how they were packed in and thrown overboard when they died, you know, chained to their own shit and vomit and menstrual blood, childbirth. Human shells, the discards on the way. Where our mothers were held, we walk now as tourists looking for cokes, film, the bathroom. A few steps beyond the brutalization, we stand in the sun, and there's a sign. There's a sign. This area for tourists only. Our very presence and ironic point of interest to the guide. You know, the guide is just pointing out what's of interest. The tourist lunch. On a rise overlooking the past, we eat jollof with pepper sauce and chicken, laugh, drink beer, fold our dresses up under us and wade thigh deep in the weary Atlantic. They take you on a tour down beneath Elmina Castle. And that's where the people were held. So this is about that. Down the long stone ramp, chained together, unchained finally from the dead, of course so many died, for months of lightlessness and the imprisoned stink, a foot square breach, the cell's only opening for air, air which entered sulfurous, having passed over the stocks of ammunition. They pressed and fell against each other. The only other way besides into the sun to be scrutinized by the officers, the chosen pulled up to apartments through a trap door. If they got pregnant, it was actually called a trap door, by the way, a trap door. If they got pregnant, they were set free, their children becoming the bastard go-betweens who could speak both tongues. How many of you are bastard go-betweens that speak both tongues? I know I'm one of them. At the bottom of the dark stone ramp, a slit in cement 6 inches wide. I swear it was no 6 inches wide. I swear it was no larger than 6 inches. And it was called the point of no return. And that's what they pushed the people singly through. So narrow because the Dutch feared two going together to the anchored ship might cause rebellion. And because starved for so many months, that opening was their body's fit. Oh, God. I don't know, guys. Maybe I should stop reading. It's just too much.
It's very tough. It's very tough for you and hard. But if you can, keep going, because I think some things need to be heard and said aloud, even when they're difficult.
Thank you, Maria. Above Elmina, at the top of the castle, there are orderly pews. It's a church. They built a church on top of Elmina Castle. We enter under a lintel carved with news. This is written on the lintel. This is the quotation. This is the house of God. Now you know what we are trying to change when we write about what's forbidden to write. That someone thinks this is the house of God. Our bodies are the house of God. Slavery. And this is an ironic twist on this whole idea. It had struck some of the African Americans in those dungeons beneath the earth. Though we had come to Africa to heal, there was a huge rip between us. These were rooms through which our ancestors had passed, while the Africans had not. Another way to look at it, a Nigerian poet answered levelly, is perhaps your ancestors escaped. Think of the fucking irony of a Nigerian saying that to an African American. We're talking about some very complicated realities here. It's not simple. Power. The palace of an African king, 2 courtyards of public and private in a complex of bone white stucco edged with a crimson stripe. The king in a huge carved chair, gold painted and lioned, wearing an understated robe of grays and browns. His face a structured pleasantness. The bones of one who has become slightly more than human. His ministers smile from faded velvet sofas, old men with remarkably intact teeth. To me, it could be any politicians, you know, right in Washington right now. A few of us standing in the courtyard are surprised by a thin man, boyish, though middle-aged, who comes toward us signaling he is begging, one hand outstretched, the other nearly touching his lips, his robe of subtle greens, his feet bare, his naked shoulder well defined as an aging athlete's. The imbecile prince, our guide, explains, the only member of the last king's family. We take care of him as if the present king were his father.
Mm.
What happened to the former king's family? You know, think about that for a minute. And this is the final one, which gives me hope. This is the hope I have. Market. It's in community is the hope. To me, we can't avoid what's real and devastating. So devastating, we can't even feel it. We don't want to feel it. Our hearts get cold and unfeeling. But here's this moment in my personal history that changes everything for a moment, for a second. Market. Those huge platters on their heads on which everything is placed accurately, each small red pepper, prawn, each orange, arranged in piles so tall they defy gravity, avocados, crabs, dried fish of silverish brown, or one great yam, 30 pounds, dirt brushed, counterbalanced in a kind of aquarium. A woman approves me with a fluent grin and offers her light basket for my head. I walk a yard, tottering awkwardly. The unremarkable commonness, a beauty shaped by women's hands.
So beautiful.
It's so hard to read and perhaps to hear. I'd love to hear what you guys thought of it and how you hung on if you did and why. You know, it's only words. It's only a little communication. It's just a way of, just like in that market, that woman offering her basket, no more than that. Say yes or no. And I'll just read a couple more poems because my time is about gone. This one is about my husband. We didn't live together for many years, but we did live together many years. And I did love him. I love him, some part of him I love very much, but it was hard to get to that part. For both of us, it was hard for us to get to each other. Not forgotten. I love the way the black ants use their dead. They carry them off like warriors on their steel backs. They spend hours struggling, lifting, dragging. It is not grisly as it would be for us to carry them back to be eaten so that every part will be of service. I think of my husband at his father's grave. The grass had closed over the headstone and the name had disappeared. He took out his pocket knife and cut the grass away. He swept it with his handkerchief to make it clear. Is this the way we'll be forgotten? And he bent down over the grave and wept.
Mm.
And the last poem, Clitoris. It's the last poem in the book, Tender. This time with your mouth on my clitoris, I will not think he does not like the taste of me. I lift the purplish hood back from the pale white berry. It stands alone on its 1,000 branches. I lift the skin like the layers of taffeta of a lady's skirt. How shy the clitoris is, like a young girl who must be coaxed by tenderness. You know, I read that poem the last time I read it, Passaic County College, and I will only have the braveness to read it around Maria.
It's a wonderful poem.
She gives me such braveness, as I'm sure she gives to you. Thank you for asking me to read. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for reading for us and for talking to us and for bringing tough poems. It certainly made me cry and made me think about things in a new way. Thank you, Toy, for your work and for the person that you are.
Thank you so much.